This is just a regular conversation with cameras pointed at us.
Okay.
Okay. Hey everyone. Been a long time. This is Joe Stack with the Mankato Times, formerly the Mankato Times. I'm sure many of you remember me and from running an online local newspaper. I did that for 5 years. And over that 5-year period, I wrote over 15,000 articles. Either wrote, co-wrote, edited, uploaded, did the whole 9 yards. And during that time, over 15,000 articles, I only wrote 3 editorials. I never thought that my opinion really needed to be heard. I let other people do the talking. Now that I no longer have the newspaper, we really don't have a venue to cover what's going on in the community, and we're back to being one-sided with people repeating what the government's telling them all the time. And that's very frustrating to many of us. So today, I am bringing up, one time only, hopefully, an online, a video editorial. I'm with my good friend Elizabeth. And what we're going to be talking about, real briefly, is the school referendum that is in front of us. Now, Elizabeth is an expert on this. As you know, we're both local. I'm right here in Mankato, so is Elizabeth. I was born and raised here. I went through both the private and public schools, 2 daughters, and they went through the public and private schools and graduated from West. So very familiar with how the school system works, how the teachers work, what has changed over the years. And Elizabeth and I have had many discussions with community members. Elizabeth has been active going to board meetings, school board meetings, and we're at a point where we said, we don't think this is a good deal, this referendum right now. We have too many problems, and we're going to just address a couple of them to give you a taste of what we're seeing. And then we'll also give you a web page you can go to that will give you more detail with the school's numbers. So Elizabeth, tell them just real brief about yourself.
So I'm a business owner in Mankato, and I have 3 daughters. One graduated from Mankato West. One is post-secondary enrolled from Mankato West to Minnesota State University, and the other is currently studying her sophomore year in the Netherlands. So I have 3 kids, and we've been in the district for a while.
Fantastic. Now this upcoming referendum, how much is it for?
So there's going to be 2 questions. Question 1 is going to be for 106 million, and question 1 has to pass in order for us to be able to pass question 2. And question 2 is going to be for approximately $15 million. So there's 2 questions at a little over $120 million.
Okay, now one of the big things that I saw is that I'm always concerned about kids. If any of you followed when I interviewed any athletes at all, first question always was, what's your favorite subject in school? Because we all know kids are not going to be professional athletes. It's just that the odds are against them. So I always wanted to know and let them know how important school was. I wanted to know who their favorite teachers were and why. And then we got into the activity that they were doing. Now, we have a testing standard and in the state. And what is our achievements right now?
We've had declining achievements since about 2015, 2017. You've seen a pretty consistent declining in our math and reading scores.
Okay.
Our students, a little over half district-wide, are proficient in math or reading, and we have really low science scores within our district.
Is that the same for surrounding schools, have you noticed? Or
Lake Crystal this year was a blue ribbon school,
okay.
So they got nationally recognized. And the year before that, Maple River was their grade school was nationally recognized as a blue ribbon school. So both Maple River and Lake Crystal have been kind of going back and forth with their elementaries getting this blue ribbon status. And I believe Lake Crystal actually has currently the highest MCA, the testing scores.
So the standards are not being met by 50% in math, English, and basically science. Yes. That's a problem. I'm at that age where I'm gonna have to start worrying about these kids staying in town working at nursing homes. I want them to be able to read and figure out math. That's a problem.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times people have a hard time understanding what does meeting a standard mean.
Yep.
And coming from my perspective, because my kids have studied abroad, so my daughter, who is currently enrolled PSEO, did study in Spain. And so what she noticed when she came back from Spain, so her freshman year was in Spain, she came back her sophomore year at West, is her comment was that the English classes in Spain, where their second language learners were more enriching than her enriched English class here at Mankato West. So again, this was an advanced English class, and she's saying that her class in Spain was more enriching. And I don't, when we have this conversation, sometimes it sounds like when I mention that I'm blaming the teachers, and I want to be clear, I am not. Because it is a policy issue. The teachers have said that the problem is we don't have enough remedial classes. So then we have kids in high school who cannot read in regular classes. And because they can't stay engaged, because they can't read, they're oftentimes acting out. So then you have students who might even be below standards, then going into rich classes just to get away from distractions.
Okay, so you're saying this is not a teacher problem. This is
This is a policy management issue.
Okay. Well,
generally speaking.
Will this referendum correct that problem?
I do not believe that this referendum corrects that problem. We
Okay.
have $20 million going to a pool. We have more money going towards gymnasiums and wrestling, moving offices near, but we're not addressing standards.
Okay, and we'll get back to that because you mentioned wrestling. We'll get back to that, folks. How about enrollment?
We have lost over 650 students since 2019. So we had initially over COVID quite a large drop off, and it's been a trickle ever since. This last year, we lost just shy of 100 students. So you're seeing a pretty consistent drop off, and I think you're going to continue seeing that in part because birth rates are lower. So part of it, you have people open enrolling and going to private schools, doing homeschools, but we also have a lower birth rate. So they're not, unless they're going to start stealing from the schools, neighboring schools, they have to bring people in.
I'm not sure how they're going to do that with those testing standards. That's very interesting. So this referendum, does this address that? I mean, because my understanding, and folks, I'm pretty accurate on this, is that we get a budget for operations based off of enrollment.
Absolutely. So when you have declining enrollment, you're going to have a dwindling operating budget as well, and building maintenance budget. So we've had our drop in students, in upwards of 700 students. And that's essentially like the size of 2 elementary schools or maybe 2/3 of a junior high, but we haven't actually closed any schools. So, there's been some rhetoric that if they go ahead and build on to current schools, they're going to be able to afford the maintenance into these new projects after they're built. But I would argue that I think that's unlikely because they haven't right-sized their district even from losing their 700 students.
Okay, that's interesting. I noticed also that they plan on expanding early childhood, basically daycare, government-run daycare in Eagle Lake. And this is a personal pet peeve of mine. When government steps in and they decide to shut down not only businesses, but female-owned businesses. The repercussions of putting a daycare, government-run daycare in Eagle Lake is going to hurt the private industry immensely. The majority of people who run daycares are females and minorities, and that's just a slap in the face, quite frankly. And I know that our GMG has promoted this. saying this is a good thing. Several problems. I don't know if they took into consideration shutting down other businesses. Just because they're not a member of GMG doesn't mean they're not a part of our community, because they are. That's number one. I don't know if they've taken into consideration a family living in upper North Mankato. Are they going to drive their kids all the way to Eagle Lake and all the way back and go to work? That's what, 35, 40-minute round trip?
Well, and they, a couple years back, bought the MRCI building and remodeled that for the preschool. And this was when we already had declining enrollment. So that wasn't a tax referendum at all. That was something they worked into their budget, is that they bought the MRCI building and remodeled it for the preschool. But then you can see preschools in Mankato, such as like the YMCA, see declining enrollment. But I think in addition to that, because we've had declining enrollment in our K-12, we do have open spaces in those buildings. So one thing I did hear from parents is they have to also drive their kids to, up by, MSU, versus having their child's younger sibling be able to walk to school with them, right? So here we're taking away a community base and putting everybody into one building.
Interesting. I mean, that really is. This is not going to help education by having the daycare. It's going to hurt businesses. And when we get to expansion, folks, I begrudgingly wrestled sometimes in high school. I wrestled at West High School. I was basically someone to get thrown around for the varsity because I was in that weight class. It was very competitive and I really didn't care. So I let them do that. But they are talking $6 million for a wrestling room. If I spend $6 million on a wrestling room, I better see every weight class have state champions for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about. I saw it in their data. I started laughing. The people I've showed it to say, "Are you kidding me?"
I'm not 100% sure those.
A wrestling room. Good Lord, you want $20 for a mat? I mean, that right there cracks me up, and it shows how delusional this is right now. We have declining students. We have lowering of test scores. We have people that aren't showing up to classes at an alarming rate. And they're asking us to build a swimming pool where people are going to have to, the high school kids are going to have to find transportation to get there. We're talking about $6 million for a wrestling room. We're talking about expanding businesses. Yes, there is security there, but if security is the number one issue, that should be the focus on this, folks. I'm not buying it. Personal opinion. And the last point I really, really want to make, where is this tax burden going to fall most heavy on?
I think it's the people who are already struggling. I mean, of course, they'll say, it's going to be about $150 a year on a $250,000 home. But of course, commercial businesses get taxed at a higher rate. Farmland gets taxed at a higher rate. But we have a growing amount of population within our community that has to choose which bills they're not going to pay every month. So it might be easy for somebody who is easily paying everything, like, oh, it's another $10 to $15 a month, not a big deal. But for families that are already struggling, this is just going to be a bill at the end of the year they're not going to be able to pay because they have to pay this instead.
Is this falling heavy on the renters?
I would say that this would, because commercial property and investment properties are going to bear a weight of it, this is obviously going to hit the renters as well. Yep.
Folks, I do not share this story very often with people. If you've ever heard my story, bless you for listening to it. But when I started the Mankato Times, I started it for several reasons. One, I was sick. I thought I was dying. I needed a purpose in life. The community gave me a purpose in life. I was able to cover stories. A lot of people were welcoming to that. And during that time also, I moved to Eagle Lake. I was on our waiting list to get into a house. I was homeless for 2 years before family and friends stepped in. And when I lived in Eagle Lake, I had to sit and figure out if I could afford the gas to go into Mankato. I kid you not. This is a guy who has always had a lot of money. All of a sudden, I went through all my money trying to get healthy, lost everything, and I had to make a decision. I had to go to a food shelf. I did it once. I just couldn't bring myself to do that. It was really tough on me. And we're now talking about a school referendum that's going to cost more money to the people that probably can't afford that money. When we have high inflation, and you can argue with me all you want, but every time I go to the grocery store, things cost more, a lot more. We have high fuel costs. We're going to have higher rents because of this. I'm telling you right now, Elizabeth, when I read through it, I decided no, and you convinced me to go door to door, knocking, talking to the community, which I don't mind doing on something like this. This isn't a political thing, folks. In the 90s, Herb Mokel, you remember the former mayor of Mankato, Herb Mokel, he got other business owners in the community to fight against the school referendum because it was a bad bill. He defeated it twice. They finally made enough changes to make it palatable for the community, and we voted it in. This is a bad bill. As a businessman, there's no way I'd put this proposal out. There's no way I can support it. The business community that is supporting it, I don't know why they decided to speak up on this right now. I really don't. Shame on them, actually, in my opinion, because they're not looking out for the community, and they're not looking out for the kids. We are not going to get the best and brightest coming to this town with their businesses when you have bad schools. That was always our attraction, folks. Always our attraction in this town.
Yeah, and I think that even when you talk to teachers, as we're going door to door and we run into teachers, a lot of them will say, they would really like to see, some of them have big class sizes, and they would like to see more paras, that if they wanted something passed, they would really like to see it more on the educational instead on the operating expenses versus the building referendums.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, teachers, I love you. This is not about you. This is not a shot at you at all. One iota. This is on the school board. This is on our superintendent. This is on the teachers' unions up in the cities that are pushing these bad ideas into our schools, and our children are paying the price. We are becoming the Minneapolis of school districts here in Mankato, and they're not addressing that issue. This referendum doesn't. So, folks, God bless. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening to us. Thank you, Elizabeth. Steck signing out. Good day.